Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm the lead investigator of the Moral Decay Index, and today we are unpacking something truly fascinating. We're doing an explainer that's literally going to crack the code between ancient, apocryphal texts and the hard, modern data that we track every single month. We're asking a massive question today. Do the ancient blueprints of societal collapse map perfectly onto our modern data? Well, let's find out.
Right out of the gate, here is our current Moral Decay Index score, 75 out of 100. It is a stark, chilling statistical reality. What this means is that our society is officially sitting in the crisis zone. Now, for decades, politicians and pundits have debated the state of America's moral fabric, but usually, just with empty rhetoric. We built this index to change that completely. We assign a weighted score using verified government and independent research data sets to actually measure our national condition. And right now, the numbers are flashing red.
So how exactly do we get that number? We impartially track core indicators of societal health, everything from high school dropouts to violent crime. No politics, no ideological agenda, just the facts. We're seeing active decay in public trust, church attendance, family unity, and institutional integrity. But to really understand the depth of these trends, we are going to use a totally unexpected lens to view them through: the ancient world. Okay, before we go any further, we need to redefine a word really quickly. In this explainer, when we use the word demon, we are absolutely not talking about literal supernatural entities or monsters out of some Hollywood horror movie. We aren't pulling from the Lesser Key of Solomon to perform a ritual here. Instead, we're using these ancient names as brilliant sociological metaphors. They are symbols for systemic corruption, algorithm-driven distraction, and societal moral drift.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the Fallen Watcher's Blueprint. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at the Ethiopian Bible, which wonderfully preserves the ancient Book of Enoch. According to the text, a group of angels called the Watchers, led by figures like Azazel, descended to earth. But here's the catch: they didn't just bring violence, they brought forbidden knowledge. They taught humanity heavenly secrets, things like metallurgy for weapons and sorcery. This unchecked technological leap led to widespread corruption and unnatural disasters, known as the Nephilim. It was essentially a three-generation timeline from initial exposure to total societal collapse.
And this brilliantly illustrates our very first data connection. Remember, this is not mythology, this is metaphor. Think about that ancient forbidden knowledge and compare it directly to our modern digital culture. Our latest longitudinal studies absolutely confirm that algorithm-driven social media content is fundamentally reshaping the values and worldviews of our youth. We have literally handed our kids powerful, unchecked tools, modern heavenly secrets, if you will, that are actively rewiring adolescent mental health and moral formation.
Moving right along to Section 2, Mammon and Asmodeus, the Consumerist Machine.
Let's look at our economic metrics through the lens of Mammon. For centuries, Mammon was depicted as a spirit whispering in the dark, tempting individuals with greed. But today, Mammon is no longer just a demon. Actually, scratch that, it's more like an overarching economic system. It perfectly symbolizes a consumerist machine built on exploitation, this relentless obsession with wealth, and the commodification of human attention. It's the invisible architecture driving so much of our societal stress today.
Then we have Asmodeus. Historically, Asmodeus was feared as the spirit of broken families and the ultimate destroyer of marriages. Look at how perfectly that maps to our family decay indicator. The United States currently has one of the highest divorce rates among developed nations, and the data we track shows this isn't just about the adults having a tough time. Family dissolution correlates directly with severe negative outcomes for children, significantly impacting their health, education, and future earning potential. Asmodeus isn't a ghost, it's a measurable, real-world developmental crisis.
Which brings us to Section 3, Bilial and Civic Collapse.
As an investigator who practically lives in these datasets, I have to tell you, the collapse of civic faith we're tracking right now is staggering. This is the number that should literally keep everyone awake at night. According to recent Gallup polling, fewer than 20% of Americans currently trust the federal government to do the right thing most of the time. That is a record low in our entire dataset.
Now, Belial is the ancient symbol of crime, disorder, and most importantly, corruption in leadership. And right now, you could argue Belial is legislating. We track reported incidents of police misconduct and federal civil rights investigations, and they have just risen steadily.
A society's institutions are only ever as strong as the integrity of those who lead them. When leadership rots, public trust just evaporates, and disorder, Belial, takes root in the streets.
Section 4. Warnings from Jubilees.
So you're probably wondering, how did ancient societies try to defend against this exact kind of rot? Well, they used texts like the Book of Jubilees, often called the Little Genesis from the Ethiopian canon. Jubilees demands extreme restraint. It organizes history into precise 49-year periods and mandates a super strict 364-day solar calendar. Now, mathematically, that's impossible, but they believed it was strictly necessary for spiritual order. Why? Because the author believed that absolute boundaries and mathematical precision were literally the only defenses against chaos and demonic forces like mastema testing humanity.
Now, contrast the strict boundaries of Jubilees with our modern indicators of lost restraint. We see it in the unchecked digital algorithms feeding our youth, for sure. But we also see it in our boundless consumerist habits, that overarching machine of mammon we just talked about. When our economic and social lives completely lack the strict communal boundaries Jubilees warned about, the social fabric unravels. We see this playing out right now in family dissolution and the massive urban high school dropout crises, where zip code-level data reveals a growing educational divide playing out in slow motion. Without structure, community fails. Plain and simple.
So, the crucial point is Section 5, Measuring the Cultural Rot.
So how do we actually quantify the ultimate loss of this community structure? Just look at the 22% drop in weekly church attendance over the last 2 decades. From a purely sociological standpoint, this is absolutely critical. Houses of worship historically provided the exact kind of communal structure and moral framework that Jubilees argued for. Without them, we're basically entering Generation 3 of the Watcher's blueprint, where a total lack of moral framework leads to widespread, irreversible societal and cultural rot. This decline creates massive downstream effects on community cohesion, charitable giving, and civic life, drastically accelerating the broader systemic decay.
Which leads us right here. We've tracked the data, the record low trust, the high dropout rates, the algorithmic distortion of our kids, and the dissolution of the family unit. The Moral Decay Index tells us we're at a 75 out of 100, and we've perfectly mapped this data onto the ancient metaphors of the Watchers, Mammon, Asmodeus, and Belial. So I leave you with this to ponder. As we scramble to try and solve our modern societal crises, are we actually just fighting the exact same ancient ghosts, simply hiding under new, modern names? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the data, and I'll see you next time.